No longer on the front lines, Anton recounts how he ended up a prisoner of war. Back in Russia, he was behind bars for the third time for drugs. When they put me in prison, I heard they were recruiting. Serve 6 months and they pardon you, he tells me. So he signed up with Storm Z, a unit made up of convicts attached to the Russian Defense Ministry. After only 2 weeks of basic training, he was shipped off to the front lines near Bakhmut. After days of intense shelling, with no food and only rainwater to drink, he heard Ukrainian troops outside his foxhole. He assumed they would execute him. I thought that was the end, he recalls. I switched my rifle to single-shot mode and thought, I'll shoot myself. But I couldn't. This video, shot by soldiers of Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade, shows the tense moments when Anton and his comrade, Slava, surrendered. The Ukrainian troops told them, unlike Russians, we don't kill prisoners. We spoke to Anton, Slava, and another soldier in a makeshift jail in eastern Ukraine, concealing their faces and not using their real names. The 3rd Assault Brigade granted us access to the POWs, and 2 of their soldiers were in the room for the interviews. The POWs will soon be transferred to Ukrainian intelligence. They didn't appear to be under duress and agreed to share their stories. Slava, also serving time for drugs, said conditions in the trenches were grim. Food was scarce. We didn't have medical kits, he says. His commanders took all the painkillers to get high, he recalled, and as a result issued nonsensical orders. Morale was terrible. Sergei was wounded by a grenade before surrendering to Ukrainian troops. He was a contract soldier, not a convict. He completed his 6-month contract in Kherson and went home. But when he hesitated to sign another contract, a military prosecutor gave him a choice: prison or back to the front. He ended up outside Bakhmut under constant Ukrainian fire. Discipline collapsed. The officers fled. All illusions were shattered. It was very different from what I saw on TV, a parallel reality, says Sergei. I felt fear, pain, and disappointment in my commanders. A law passed last year in Russia imposed sentences of 3 to 10 years for soldiers who surrender voluntarily. If he returns home in a prisoner exchange, Anton may end up, again, back in a Russian prison. Men like Slava and Anton are barely soldiers. They were hardly trained, poorly led, poorly supplied. They were, to put it crudely, the meat in Russia's meat grinder in the Battle of Bakhmut. Now, the Ukrainians say that they are making slow but steady gains there, but they are running into very stiff resistance. The Russians have reportedly poured 50,000 troops into the defense of that town, many of whom will probably end up in the meat grinder. Jake?
Remarkable reporting from CNN's Ben Wiedemann in eastern Ukraine. Thank you so much. CNN is also on the ground in Belarus, a close ally of Russia, and now apparently the home of Wagner mercenary warlord Yevgeny Prigozhin after his short-lived, largely unchallenged mutiny in Russia last week. It was ill-fated, of course. Belarus's leader, Alexander Lukashenko, was not shy about his role in ending Wagner and Prigozhin's rebellion. Lukashenko claimed he was able to successfully negotiate with Prigozhin when the Wagner boss refused to pick up Putin's phone calls. Let's get right to CNN's Matthew Chance, who is in Minsk. Matthew, what's the latest on the Putin-Lukashenko relationship? Are they still tight?
Well, I mean, it's a fascinating relationship, but it's pretty one-sided in the sense that, when Putin asks for something to be done, Lukashenko, this is what it looks like from the outside, Lukashenko just goes ahead and does it. Putin wanted to use Belarus as a launching pad, one of the launching pads for his invasion of Ukraine in 2021. Lukashenko agreed. Putin wanted nuclear weapons to be stationed in this country so that he could threaten the West even further. Lukashenko agreed. And when there was that military uprising, that attempted coup, as it's been described in Russia, by Wagner mercenaries and their leader Yevgeny Prigozhin, what was it, last week? Lukashenko stepped in and invited Wagner and Prigozhin to come and live over here. The Kremlin announced all of those things, of course, but Lukashenko, says this was all him. This was all him showing what an independent, free kind of agent he is operating in this region. But the fact is, he's heavily indebted to Russia. And so he owes them a lot of money, more money than any other country in the world. He's isolated internationally because of his own terrible human rights record. And those things are pushing Belarus more and more into the arms of the Kremlin. Jake.
CNN's Matthew Chance in Belarus. Thank you so much. Joining us now to discuss retired U.S. Army Brigadier General Peter Zwack. He served as a senior U.S. defense attaché to Russia. Also with us in studio, Beth Sanner, former Deputy Director of National Intelligence. General Zwack, let me start with you. Back to what we just heard in that incredible Ben Wedeman report at the top of the hour. One of the POWs accused the Russian commanders of being high all the time on painkillers and giving at times nonsensical orders. Understandably, this led to very low morale, according to this POW. Do you think that's true? Does that comport with other intelligence that we've heard? And what can Ukraine do to capitalize on any low morale?
Good evening, Jake, viewers. War is hell at any level, but especially in the trenches, especially when you're coerced to fight. And that we've been getting all since the beginning of the invasion last year, that most of the Russian forces on the ground, and that would be young soldiers and junior to mid-grade officers, are an absolutely living hell down there. And the coercion and the storm units and everything else. So yes, I do believe whether it's pills or drinking, lots of drinking, that those reports that things go on at that low level where discipline is on the edge, which we've been reading for quite some time, it is completely feasible. The troops, I don't think, have any faith in their leadership. The only thing they're fighting for at that level, I believe, is for their own lives and for their foxhole buddies, but they're not fighting for the regime. And Yevgeny Prigozhin brought that out. So no, this is a real erosion within the Russian ranks. That I don't know what the breaking point is, but it's there. And now they're going to put in so-called another 180,000, that big number. Well, a lot of them certainly do not want to come if this is true. And I think we just have to sort of stand by.
So that, Beth Sanner, is already the situation before the Wagner-Prigozhin attempted rebellion. And you've said that the rings of implication from that attempted mutiny will spread very wide now that we're more than a week out from it. How do you see Putin's grip on power and his reliance on the leader of Belarus, Alexander Lukashenko?
Well, I actually don't think that his grip on power in the very near term is shaken as much as a lot of commentators say. I think more about the rings being more unstable. The closer you get into the elites, the more firm it is for the time being. And the reason being is because those elites depend on Putin and Putin's reign, right? And so he put his cards in with Shoigu in the military, and now the military, those people owe him even more. So while there were a few bad apples, certainly, what did Putin do? He raised the pay of the military. He held a ceremony giving them false thanks, right? Because they didn't help out during the mutiny, but he held this big ceremony saying how great they were. He's trying to keep those people together. So I actually think that in the near term, I think that Putin isn't that much weaker.
And then Russian state media reports Ukrainian shelling has killed one person and injured 40, including children, in Donetsk, Russian-occupied territory, damaging kindergartens, medical facilities, apartments. That's what Russia says. Ukraine says they destroyed a Russian military base. When it comes to this sort of like competing claims, do you just automatically discount what the Kremlin says because they've lied about so many things, including whether or not they were going to invade Ukraine?
Well, a lot of times Russia says exactly what you would expect them to say. You know, they're always going to be blaming the other side, and they're always going to be trying these false flags. For example, in the Zaporizhia nuclear plant, them saying that the Ukrainians are about to attack could be a cover for what they do themselves. So they're always trying to change that perception of their own people in particular. They don't want to be seen as, butchers.
Yeah. All right, Beth Sander and Brigadier General Peter Zwack, thanks to both of you for your expertise. Appreciate it.